Tonight, tourism businesses demand more support as the wait for new Bass Strait ferry stretches to 2027. Hello, I'm Guy Stayner. This is ABC News. Also tonight, Qantas insists it's turned a corner on customer service at its annual general meeting in Hobart. An elderly couple killed when a truck crashed into their house in Victoria. And Tasmania thrashes WA, winning with 41 overs to spare. The disappointment over news that the new Spirit of Tasmania ships won't be operating in the state until early 2027 is starting to sink in for tourism businesses. While the government's multi-million-dollar tourism rescue package has been welcomed, many are questioning whether it'll be enough to make up for the loss of extra visitors the new ships were going to bring.
For the past 5 years, caravan park owner Peter Robinson has been preparing for the arrival of the new Spirit of Tasmania ferries.
The redevelopment, the acquisition and the building of accommodation was $5 million plus.
The ships, with their 40% extra capacity, have been described as a game changer for the state and should reduce the currently long wait for a caravan to get on.
It's just frustrating because we get people ring up and they're trying to plan a trip and we say to them on the phone straight away, so before you even start planning a trip, ring TT Line up and find out when you can get on.
Unfortunately, Mr Robinson is far more organised than ferry operator TT Line, which has found itself with almost ready ships but no home berth. That won't be finished until February 2027.
It's just ridiculous. Can't they organise their way out of a brown paper bag?
It's actually very disappointing that they didn't forward plan for that one.
I think it's like the same as the bridge that didn't line up. The new bridge that they're building that doesn't join up. It's ridiculous.
The government's being urged to sail its way out of the stuff-up. At the moment, there are only a few double-day sailings a week. There are calls to increase that dramatically.
I do think we need to drive the two vessels we currently have as hard as we can to fill the gap that was going to be filled by the two new vessels.
What they need to do is add as many day sailings as they possibly can onto the roster now online so that people can actually book it.
While the caravan spaces might fill up fast, the ships aren't always at capacity. In fact, overall bookings are down roughly 12% for the upcoming peak season. The government's hoping subsidised fares, which are part of its $26 million tourism package, will lead to more general bookings and extra day sailings.
We absolutely take responsibility. We are sad about it. We feel disappointed. We feel let down, but we're not shying away from the fact that we now have these issues.
Launching a rescue boat this morning, the government hopes it's not too late to fix the ferry fiasco. Lucy MacDonald, ABC News.
At its annual general meeting in Hobart today, Qantas has vowed to continue its efforts to resurrect its tarnished brand. While the airline's share price has soared to record highs, shareholders and passengers still have questions over how the airline is run. And union members stopped work today seeking better pay.
A broken down baggage system meant chaos for passengers at Adelaide Airport.
Baggage system is currently offline.
Worried about going through security at the moment because the lineup is huge.
You don't know if we're going to miss our flight or anything.
And there's been strike action by Qantas engineers across the country at peak travel times.
No more delays! Time for fair pay!
It's all been happening against the backdrop of the airline's annual general meeting in Hobart.
There is no pretending that last year was anything other than a very difficult year for Qantas.
Selling tickets for cancelled flights and the illegal sacking of 1,700 workers during the pandemic has hurt the airline's brand and will cost it hundreds of millions of dollars.
I can assure you that the issues that caused the difficulties and reputational damage last year have been and are being comprehensively addressed.
While the airline is determined to move on, some shareholders are keen to look back.
As I look around here, I feel the ghost of Alan Joyce in the room.
Disquiet from some shareholders about financial incentives for executives failed to lead to a spill of the entire board.
We do feel that Qantas listened to us and our concerns.
As for customers and the airline's pledge to do better,
I think they're probably on track.
I think it's got a fair way to go, really.
I fly a lot. I think they've been pretty incredible.
in a bid to restore its reputation, the airline is offering more frequent flyer seats and is upgrading its fleet. But its announcement of a $1,000 bonus for employees is unlikely to appease all workers.
Bonuses are a one-off. They don't pay the bills. They don't really lift your head above water in the cost of living crisis, which we are in the middle of.
We are looking forward for solutions that deliver improvement in pay, in conditions for our people, while ensuring that we can continue to invest.
An airline navigating a path out of troubled times. Fiona Blackwood, ABC News.
King Charles has issued a dire warning on climate change while opening a meeting of Commonwealth leaders in Samoa. The monarch says warming temperatures and seas pose an existential threat to the globe, urging leaders to move quickly to slash emissions. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts is in Apia.
A celebration fit for a king. The monarch and fellow Commonwealth leaders together in Samoa, united also in message about the rapidly intensifying climate threat.
Lives, livelihoods and human rights are at risk across the Commonwealth.
It is the greatest threat to the survival and security of our Pacific people.
Charles has been a long-time climate advocate, now on the throne, only slightly less forceful.
I can only offer every encouragement for action with unequivocal determination to arrest rising temperatures by cutting emissions.
And as the leaders gather, another reminder of the stakes. The United Nations warning there's a risk of a catastrophic 3 degrees of global warming by the end of this century, unless more is done to slash emissions. Australia's not immune. Its climate record has come under fire from the Pacific. But the PM says leaders understand Australia's trying to strike a balance.
They recognise that the challenge of climate change doesn't mean that you can just flick a switch and act immediately. We need to make sure that energy security is prioritised.
While future threats are dominating this CHOGM, the Commonwealth's past is also casting a shadow over the meeting, with some Caribbean and African leaders still pressing for slavery reparations. The UK's ruled that out, but Commonwealth leaders look set to endorse a final statement which acknowledges the controversy and calls for a, quote, conversation about the best way forward.
I understand from listening to people across the Commonwealth how the most painful aspects of our past continue to resonate.
The very fact that there are concerns that have arisen means that there must be conversations to be had.
A discussion unlikely to die away. Stephen Jedgetts, ABC News, Apia.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says there are hopes ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas could begin again in the coming days. Israeli airstrikes continue to rain down in Gaza, with an attack on a school sheltering displaced Palestinians, killing at least 17 people and wounding dozens more.
A race to save the wounded. The Israeli military bombed this school in the Nuseirat refugee camp, saying it housed a Hamas command centre. The hospital that received the casualties says the vast majority of the dead are children.
By God, not a single man, all children and women, and all of them in pieces.
In Gaza's north, at the centre of Israel's offensive, impossible conditions are getting even worse. One of the last remaining hospitals is now said to lack even basic supplies.
If nothing is done to respond to this situation within the next few hours, there will be a humanitarian catastrophe. Kamal Adwan Hospital will turn into a mass grave.
The situation is a byproduct of Israel's push into the Jabalia refugee camp. The UN says that operation has displaced 63,000 Palestinians. United States and Israeli negotiators will meet in Doha in the coming days in a bid to restart ceasefire talks. The US Secretary of State is urging Hamas to return to the negotiating table. Antony Blinken might be hopeful of progress in Gaza, but ending Israel's fight with Hezbollah militants in Lebanon could be more complicated. More strikes on Beirut. Israel's campaign against Iran-backed Hezbollah has now killed 2,500 people and displaced 1 million in Lebanon. And direct involvement from Iran itself remains a risk.
I hope Iran is getting the message very clearly from, not just from us, but from other countries, directly or indirectly, that any further attacks it engages on toward Israel really risk fundamentally its interests.
The US still talking about containing a conflict that's spread further and gone for much longer than it wanted. Eric Twarchek, ABC News.
Advanced military technology for undersea warfare is being tested off the New South Wales coast by Australia and its AUKUS partners. For weeks, military and industry representatives have practiced deploying cutting-edge drones while sharing real-time data, and soon Japan is expected to join the activity.
Off one of the most picturesque military bases in Australia, AUKUS partners experiment with cutting-edge maritime technology.
We're working together to create a more capable, more collaborative joint force of the future.
For weeks, 3 militaries working alongside industry have conducted a series of experiments and exercises with drones to improve undersea warfare techniques.
That allows Australia, the US and the UK to trial and test our autonomous systems in a real-world environment.
Among the homegrown innovations being examined, a large uncrewed underwater vehicle known as Speartooth.
We're trying to understand the edges of the technology and take it to failure so we can improve it and continue to evolve that technology.
These exercises are also the first time the AUKUS partners will be testing the transfer of tactical control, which will allow any of the 3 countries to take control of autonomous vessels anywhere in the world.
Virtually as soon as the AUKUS partnership was born, other nations expressed interest in collaborating in so-called Pillar 2 projects, including regional ally Japan. The ABC has revealed Japanese officials were invited as official observers for this year's event, and planning is underway for the country to participate next time. Tim Fernandez, ABC News, Jervis Bay.
A truck has crashed into a house in southwest Victoria, killing an elderly couple in their bedroom. The truck left the highway at 7 o'clock this morning and ploughed 200 metres through a field before crashing into the brick home, killing 81-year-old Jim Madden and his 80-year-old wife, Carmel. The 70-year-old driver is in Warrnambool Hospital in a non-life-threatening condition and is being questioned by police. Police say while they don't believe speed was an issue, the truck doesn't appear to have slowed down as expected before hitting the house. Independent Senator Lydia Thorpe says she was assaulted earlier this year at a public event which left her with spinal injuries and nerve damage. In a statement, the senator said she had to have surgery and a plate inserted, which has left a scar on the front of her neck. She made the statement in response to media questions about why she was absent on a number of parliamentary sitting days this year. She says Victoria Police is investigating the assault. A former president and a rock star were just the warm-up acts for the Democratic presidential candidate on the campaign trail. Kamala Harris was courting voters in the swing state of Georgia just 12 days out from the election. Her opponent, Donald Trump, was also targeting battleground states, with polls suggesting it's a very tight race. North America correspondent Barbara Miller is in Atlanta, Georgia.
A former president introduces a potential future occupant of the White House.
Good evening, Georgia!
On a balmy Atlanta evening, Kamala Harris making her pitch to voters in the key swing state.
It's either Donald Trump in there stewing over his enemies list, or me working for you checking off my to-do list.
Crowds here hoping the first female vice president of colour could be about to break another glass ceiling.
History in the making. To see someone with similar color skin like me and a woman. Our democracy is at stake.
She's actually restored my faith in politics.
And if a former president wasn't enough, how about inviting a rock star along?
I'm Bruce Springsteen, and I am here today to support Kamala Harris and Tim Walz for President and Vice President of the United States.
Donald Trump, meanwhile, hitting Arizona and Nevada, another two key battlegrounds, campaigning on the issue of illegal immigration.
Immediately upon taking the oath of office, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history.
The former president also outlining more plans for any second term, vowing to sack Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, who brought 2 criminal cases against him.
It's so easy. I would fire him within 2 seconds.
Well over 2 million people in Georgia have already cast their ballot. Early voting records are tumbling, and there's a dwindling number of people who haven't yet made up their minds. But the campaigns are pulling out all the stops.
And when we fight, we win!
As the 2024 race hits the home straight. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Atlanta, Georgia.
Still to come on ABC News, will the infamous Menendez brothers be released from prison? And Cricket Australia gives David Warner another crack at leadership. 24 people are confirmed dead after a tropical storm Trami hit the Philippines. The storm made landfall on the northeast coast of Luzon, the country's most populous island, dumping a month's worth of rain in 24 hours. Widespread flooding and landslides have forced residents to the second floors of their homes. About 150,000 people are sheltering in evacuation centres. A US judge is set to reconsider the life sentences of the Menendez brothers after a Netflix documentary helped a campaign from family and celebrities gain traction. The case has been back in the spotlight 35 years after the pair were convicted of killing their parents in their Beverly Hills mansion.
It was a high-profile Hollywood double murder that captured the world's attention. 21-year-old Lyle and 19-year-old Eric Menendez were convicted of brutally shooting their own parents. They were locked up for life with no chance of parole for the 1989 crime, but now there's a possibility they could walk free.
We're going to recommend to the court that the life without the possibility of parole be removed.
The brothers' story has been back in the headlines recently with the release of a popular documentary.
Everyone asks why we kill our parents. Maybe now people can understand the truth.
There was also a fictionalised series that focused on the allegations of serious abuse inflicted by the boys' parents.
And we decided we weren't going to take that anymore.
At the time, a court suggested these claims were made up and the brothers' motive was gaining access to their parents' fortunes.
And I do believe that the brothers were subjected to a tremendous amount of dysfunction in the home and molestation.
Relatives have come together to campaign for the pair's release.
Their continued incarceration serves no rehabilitative purpose. It's time to recognize the injustice they've suffered and allow them the second chance they deserve.
Celebrities and internet stars have also advocated for the brothers.
They never got a fair second trial.
A Los Angeles judge will make a final determination on the brothers' future on a date yet to be set. Isabella Higgins, ABC News.
The British former nurse and convicted child serial killer Lucy Letby has been denied an appeal against her conviction for the attempted murder of a newborn baby. The 34-year-old has been convicted of murdering 7 children and attempting to murder 7 more. Her lawyers sought an appeal against a further conviction for the attempted murder of an 8th child. They argued the jury were prejudiced by the media coverage of her original trial, a claim the judges disputed. Letby, who is Britain's worst serial child killer of modern times, is serving 15 life sentences. Australia's Indigenous tourism sector offers visitors a unique window into one of the world's oldest living cultures. There's been a surge in demand for these experiences, but industry leaders say the sector is being overlooked, costing the economy millions of dollars in untapped potential.
From the lush landscapes of far north Queensland, the Mundraby family is making waves in the tourism industry. Their Indigenous-owned and run tour company combines storytelling, environmental education and cultural experiences.
The foundation of this is around providing employment that'll create change through opportunity.
Visitors embark on a scenic boat ride from Cairns, learning about the surrounding environment from an Indigenous guide during the short trip across the bay. On the other side, they're whisked away to a bush block for a traditional welcome and take a guided walk on traditional country. Today's contingent of North American tourists are impressed.
I learned a lot. I learned about soap, I learned about natural stuff.
The company now employs 22 people and welcomes more than 5,000 guests each year. But the journey has not been without its challenges.
When we first started off, the conversation we had with industry and potential partners is, sounds like a wonderful vision, guys. Good luck with that.
A parliamentary inquiry has recommended sweeping changes, including the establishment of a First Nations tourism body to capitalise on the growing demand for Indigenous tourism.
The new body would be separate from the existing taxpayer-funded Tourism Australia and would be modelled on the Western Australia Indigenous Tourism Operators Council, or WATOC.
Developing the Aboriginal tourism sector so it's ready for the international market.
The federal government says it's considering the report's findings. Christy Sexton-McGrath, ABC News.
Billions of dollars have been wiped off the value of two major companies this week after their billionaire founders were embroiled in a number of scandals, while the overall share market finished slightly higher. Here's David Chow.
Today's best performing stock was WiseTech Global. As you can see, investors cheered after Richard White, the scandal-plagued billionaire, decided to step down as CEO. And even with the 13% jump in its share price, the software firm is only back to where it was a few days ago. It's still down 20% since the start of the month, which is when the financial press started reporting on Mr. White's numerous affairs with women and allegations that he engaged in bullying and intimidation. And that led to $3 billion being wiped off his personal fortune, as most of it is tied up in WiseTech shares. Now, looking forward, WiseTech says Mr. White will stay on as founder and founding CEO, which begs the question, how much power will the new CEO actually have? So while WiseTech bounced back and the share market went up slightly by 0.2%, today's worst performer was Mineral Resources, which is also embroiled in a scandal. Over the past week, this mining company has lost a quarter of its value, which coincides with media reports that its founder and CEO Chris Ellison had allegedly been evading tax for years, and this is currently being investigated by the corporate regulator ASIC. In case you're wondering, it's the same Chris Ellison who famously wanted to ban his workers from leaving the office to buy coffee. Now, looking overseas, share markets rose in most places except for Japan, which is voting for a new prime minister this weekend. In commodities, oil prices slipped while gold and iron ore had a decent jump, and the Aussie dollar has dropped to 66.2 US cents. And that's finance.
Tasmania has thrashed Western Australia in a one-day game at the Wacker with 41 overs to spare. WA was 2 for 52 in the 15th over, then proceeded to lose an astonishing 8 wickets for just 1 run to be all out for 53, WA's lowest ever score in a 50 over game. The last 6 batters dismissed all made ducks. Bo Webster was the destroyer for Tasmania, taking 6 for 17, with Billy Stanlake chipping in with 3 for 12. At one stage in the run chase, the Tigers lost 3 wickets in 11 balls before reaching the target in the 8th over with 7 wickets in hand. Cricket Australia has removed David Warner's lifetime leadership ban effective immediately. The ban was put into place in 2018 as a result of the ball tampering scandal in South Africa. A three-member independent panel has unanimously decided to overturn the decision. Warner has retired from international cricket, but this would allow him to captain the Sydney Thunder in the Big Bash League this season.
This is far bigger than a cricket captaincy role. This is leadership in a lifelong context, so any administrative role, any captaincy or coaching role in cricket. So this was about him, his daughters in particular, the legacy he wants to leave for his family.
It seems nothing can stop the high-flying Hawks, who are sitting pretty on top of the AFLW table. The Naarm Demons couldn't stand in the way of Hawthorn's 7-match winning streak, and the tropical heat of Cairns wasn't slowing them down either, as they ran out 6-point winners, leaving Melbourne's finals hopes hanging by a thread. Against her former side, midfielder Eliza West set the tone, collecting a game-high 25 touches and 6 clearances.
But it was her work and pressure and defensive efforts in and around the contest, which was, just amazing. Like she's a great player. She's had a fantastic season.
There are just 3 Indigenous players in the ranks of the men's A-League, as many are drawn to the bigger stage of an AFL or NRL career. It's a damning statistic one teenager is hell-bent on changing through his own soccer journey.
It's another baking hot day in Adelaide and Bailey O'Neill is pushing through the pain barrier. The teenager has already represented Australia at underage level and is putting his hand up to make his A-League debut.
Very aggressive, I like 1v1s, I like battles, I like to defend, then get forward and be very powerful moving forward with speed.
Like all soccer talents who dream big, the 18-year-old wants to eventually play overseas, not just for himself, but to inspire a generation.
If I can do as well as I can and perform on the pitch, I can try and influence young Indigenous kids to play the game, yeah.
Watching over his shoulder is former player and now Reds assistant coach Travis Dodd, who likes what he sees in O'Neill.
It's just like street smarts. I think I'd put it down to little things off the ball just to put your opponent off, and these little niggly things that you can't really teach that.
Travis was my idol growing up. I watched him play in the A-League and for the Socceroos, and he was the first Indigenous player to score for the Socceroos.
Despite the likes of Dodd having illustrious careers, O'Neill is one of just 3 Indigenous players in current A-League squads. The former Socceroo says the AFL and NRL's domination of sporting coverage is a huge factor, and both are determined to change it.
Yeah, they can look up to me and just look at me as a sort of a role model and try and do their best.
Baby steps, and hopefully we can get that ball rolling, and love to see it snowball into an avalanche, and hopefully we can see an influx of players in years to come.
Matthew Smith, ABC News.
To the weather, and tonight's photo of Stanley is from Val Hine. Now, my director was disappointed I didn't write a nut pun. Perhaps I have an undisclosed nut allergy. Hobart was plunged back into winter today, a top of just 12 degrees. It reached 17 in Burnie, Launceston and Devonport topped the state with 18. The heaviest rainfall was about the south and southwest. Warra had 15 millimetres, Dover 12, Denali 10. The satellite image shows us in a cold southerly airstream. Tomorrow a high will move over the state, meaning we're in for a day of mostly light winds that will slowly swing northerly as the high slides to our east. Across the country tomorrow, just the chance of a light shower in Brisbane, but fine in all the other capitals. 20 degrees in Sydney, Melbourne 21, Adelaide 27. Back home, after patchy morning frost, it will be fine until light showers develop about the west and south during the afternoon. Just a medium chance of showers about the west, 17 degrees there. Staying fine in Burnie 14, Devonport 15. Launceston should reach a top of 18 after a low of just 2 tomorrow morning. -2 in Campbelltown before a top of 17 degrees. The chance of a shower in Ouse, 17 for St Helens, 18 in Swansea. Also a cold start for other towns further inland. Hobart's heading for a top of 17 degrees after a low of 4. Sunrise tomorrow will be at 6:01. On coastal waters, there'll be light variable winds becoming northerly during the day and reaching up to 30 knots about the central west tomorrow night, where there's a strong wind warning. There's a frost warning tomorrow for the Midlands and Upper Derwent Valley. Sunday, showers easing during the afternoon and evening. Monday, mostly fine apart from showers about the west and south. And looking ahead, warmer on Tuesday and Wednesday. Good night.